He found it behind the radiator. Almost threw it out. Now it's worth more than his apartment. Evan didn't expect to find anything interesting. He was just trying to finish a job. His uncle's garage hadn't been touched in years. After the funeral, the family mostly focused on paperwork and bank accounts. Nobody volunteered to deal with the junk. But Evan lived closest, and besides, he owed the old man. His uncle had taught him how to change oil, rewire an outlet, patch drywall. All the quiet, useful things his own dad never had time for. So now he was here, Saturday morning, dust in his nose, knees sore from crouching, dragging tools and cracked boxes across the concrete floor while the early spring light filtered through a greasy skylight. The place was a museum of forgotten hardware. Coffee cans full of bent nails, old license plates, 4 dead radios stacked like bricks. Every drawer squeaked, and every shelf bowed under the weight of maybe useful someday. He was behind the radiator, trying to untangle an extension cord that had fused with a spiderweb, when he felt it. A little knock against his knee. A flash drive. It was wedged in the corner where the floor met the wall, stuck behind a bracket and half covered in sawdust. At first he thought it was just a zip tie or wire nut. But when he reached down and pulled it free, he realized it was a USB stick. Black plastic, no brand, no markings. Wrapped in 2 layers of fraying black electrical tape. He turned it over. The casing was scratched. The metal connector was bent slightly sideways, like it had been forced into the wrong port or twisted during removal. And that tape, it wasn't for decoration. It looked like it had been wound tight, deliberately, like someone didn't want the contents accessed by accident. He nearly tossed it into the trash bag with the rusted screws and brittle Ziploc bags full of who knows what. But something about it stopped him. The thing felt sealed, like it hadn't been dropped, it had been hidden. He slipped it into his shirt pocket, along with a couple of loose washers and a tiny combination lock he thought might fit the shed door. He didn't think about it again for hours. The night, back at his apartment, Evan dumped the contents of his flannel onto the kitchen counter. Keys, receipts, a half-melted throat lozenge, and the flash drive. It looked smaller under proper light, more battered. The tape was grimy and soft at the edges, like it had been sitting for years in a warm place. He peeled it off slowly, one sticky curl at a time, half expecting something to fall out. A note, a hair, a paperclip. But no, just plastic. Worn, quiet, and anonymous. He didn't plug it into his main laptop. He wasn't reckless. Instead, he found his old ThinkPad from college, the one with the cracked hinge and missing shift key, and powered it up offline. The drive mounted instantly. No folders, no applications, just a single text file. It was named Do Not Delete. .wallet text. He frowned, paused, double-clicked, and then sat completely still. He didn't recognize what he was looking at. Not at first. The file opened in a plain text editor, just a white screen with black monospace letters. No formatting, no explanations. It was 4 lines long. Each line was a block of alphanumeric chaos, 64 characters across, no spaces. Evan stared at it for a few seconds, expecting it to morph into something intelligible. It didn't. It just sat there, a cold, digital wall. He copied the first few characters into his phone and opened a browser. The top search result made him blink. Bitcoin private key format, 64-character hexadecimal string. He read it twice, then again. A private key? Like for a wallet? He had a vague memory of hearing about something like this. People losing fortunes on laptops, flash drives, hard disks, wallets lost to time, forgotten passwords, billionaires who couldn't log in. But that was internet lore, Reddit stuff. This felt different. He switched tabs and pulled up a Bitcoin Explorer. Not to import, just to verify. He scrolled through a couple of guides, trying to figure out how to check a balance without connecting anything. The most repeated warning across every site: never import a private key from an unknown source on an online system. Ever. He sat back in his chair. The glow of the old ThinkPad screen buzzed faintly, like it was holding its breath. Could this actually be real? In the garage, he'd found other things too, not just tools. His uncle had kept a file cabinet in the corner, with dusty envelopes and plastic sleeves full of manuals, receipts, scribbled notes. Evan had grabbed a handful of stuff that looked intentional. One manila folder had a yellow sticky note that just said, "Ken, BTC Drive, backed up. Ask Mitch if you forget." Ken was his uncle's first name. BTC, that couldn't be a coincidence. He flipped open the folder. Inside was a printout from what looked like a wallet interface. Maybe a screenshot from years ago. It had a QR code, a wallet address, and a handwritten note. Drive is sealed. Cold storage only. Never connect online. Use AirGap plus Paper Verify. J and 2013. He felt a little jolt in his chest. 2013. He Googled it. Bitcoin price in 2013? Between $100 and $1,000, depending on the month. Even one coin from back then would be worth tens of thousands now. But this file, this key, could be access to more. He paced around the kitchen, phone in hand, trying to stay rational. There was still a chance it was fake, a prank, an old note left behind from some YouTube rabbit hole his uncle went down. But the way it was hidden, the tape, the file name, it didn't feel like noise. He needed help, someone who could verify it without screwing it up, someone smart and paranoid. He texted Nate. "Yo, got a weird favor. You know anything about crypto wallets from like 2013? Nate responded 6 minutes later. "If you found an old wallet file, don't do anything. Don't import, don't connect. Tell me what it says." Evan sent a photo of the flash drive and the file, then the note, then just waited. When Nate finally called, he sounded out of breath. "Evan, that's not a joke. That's a raw private key. If it's valid, and I mean if, that's serious." "How serious?" "Serious enough that you shouldn't text me about it. We're not doing this over the phone. You free next weekend?" Evan looked at the screen again, that little .text file. Suddenly, the air in the room felt heavier. Something about the way Nate said, "valid." It was like standing in front of a locked vault. And maybe, holding the key, he flew out with the flash drive in his carry-on, slept with it under a hotel pillow. Evan hadn't seen Nate in 2 years, but when it came to things like this, crypto, encryption, cold storage, there was no one he trusted more. Back in college, Nate was the guy who ran Linux on a toaster just to prove a point. Now, he worked in cybersecurity for a private fintech firm and talked about the blockchain like it was a religion. Evan flew to Seattle that Friday. He kept the flash drive in a zipper pouch, which he tucked into a sock, which he wedged inside his sneaker, inside his carry-on. The thought of it going through checked baggage made him queasy. At the airport, he avoided all public Wi-Fi, turned off Bluetooth, and muttered apologies to the TSA agent who flagged his backpack for irregular density. When he finally got to his hotel, he didn't sleep. He placed the pouch under his pillow like a paranoid pirate guarding treasure. Every creak in the hallway made him flinch. The next morning, they met at Nate's apartment, an unassuming second-floor walk-up filled with server parts and coffee mugs that said things like, "Hack the planet." "You bring the thing?" Nate asked. Evan pulled out the drive and handed it over without a word. They worked in silence for a while. Nate had prepped everything. Clean USB sticks, a laptop that had never touched the internet, a fresh install of Tails OS, a privacy-first Linux distro, no Wi-Fi drivers, no wireless card, air-gapped to hell. They ran the verification process manually, no copy-paste, no online services, just raw commands. Evan watched the screen while Nate typed. First, they confirmed the format. Yes, it was a valid 256-bit private key. Then, they used an offline tool to derive the public address. Then, another tool to generate a read-only wallet, using only that address, on a separate air-gapped system. Then came the final step. Nate ran the balance check, using a third machine internet-connected, but with no traceable link to the others. He copied the public address manually, typed it in, and pressed enter. There was a moment of stillness. Then the screen lit up. Balance, 10.0 BTC. Last movement, November 18, 2013. Current USD value, $427,000. Evan felt his whole body go cold. 10. Not $10. Not 10 Satoshis. 10 full Bitcoin. He couldn't speak, couldn't move, just stared at the screen like it was showing someone else's future. Nate leaned back and exhaled. Well, you're rich. Am I? You will be, if you don't screw this up. Astoundingly, they sat for another hour, sketching out options. Cold storage, hardware wallets, multi-sig transfers, legal custody, taxes, risks, traceability, threat models. Nate spoke in bullet points. Evan nodded, mostly to keep himself from falling over. He wasn't ready to think about spending. Not yet. What he felt more than anything was pressure, like he was standing at the edge of something fragile. If he clicked the wrong thing, connected the wrong wire, it could all vanish. This wasn't like winning the lottery. This was like being handed a loaded weapon and told to walk slowly through customs. Eventually, Nate shut down the machines and handed Evan a new drive. This one's yours now. Clean wallet. Cold signed. Offline only. The original stays in the safe. Evan held it like a newborn bird. You sure this works? We triple verified it, but don't test it. Not yet. Evan looked down at the object in his hands. The new drive was sterile, blank, unmarked, but the old one, the one wrapped in tape, still sat on the desk nearby. And that's when he realized what he was really holding. Want to know what he did with it? Hit subscribe. I'm about to show you. It sat in his sock drawer for 27 days. He didn't touch it, not once. He brought the new cold wallet home in a zippered pouch, wrapped it in foil, vacuum sealed it twice, and locked it inside a fireproof box, which he then placed inside a larger gun safe that he bolted to the floor. No one knew. Not his mom, not his sister, not the woman he was kind of sort of seeing. He didn't even tell his landlord he was installing a safe, just said he was doing earthquake prep. He thought he'd feel excited, but mostly he felt pressure. The kind that sat behind your eyes, the kind that made your stomach buzz every time you opened the fridge or checked your bank balance. The kind that whispered, "Don't screw this up." The thing was, he needed the money. His car was dying. His student loans were still bleeding interest. He was 2 months behind on rent and hadn't told anyone. But how do you sell 10 Bitcoin without making a sound? He started reading. Every night, for hours, how to split coins across wallets, how to tumble transactions, how to not look like you were laundering money even when you were doing everything legal. It felt like studying for a final exam in a subject he never signed up for. A bit with done. Eventually, he decided to test the waters. He moved just one coin from the cold wallet to a new software wallet, generated fresh on a wiped burner laptop. He used a mobile hotspot with a spoofed MAC address and an IP masking VPN. It took him 4 days just to feel confident enough to click send. Then he sat there, sweating, watching the blockchain confirm it. When it landed, he sold 0.1 BTC, about 4 grand. He used it to pay down his smallest loan, buy new tires, and fix a cracked pipe under the kitchen sink. No celebration, no champagne. He just breathed a little easier. A bit stunned, after that, he waited 2 more weeks. Nothing strange happened. No calls, no weird emails, no knocks at the door. So he moved another coin, sold it a little slower. This time, through a legal exchange with ID verification, taxes withheld, paperwork filed. That payout? He used it to pay off every cent of his remaining student debt. He stared at the zero balance email for a full 20 minutes, not because he didn't believe it, but because it felt like a window had opened that had always been painted shut, unformally. Still, the original flash drive stayed in his apartment. He kept it in a heavy ceramic bowl in the top drawer of his dresser, the one with the old socks and expired passport. It looked the same as the day he'd found it, scuffed, bent, wrapped in new tape now just to make it feel contained. He didn't like looking at it. It felt like a question he still couldn't answer. What had his uncle been doing with it? How had he gotten those coins in 2013? Why hadn't he used? Evan went through every notebook and receipt he could find, looked up old emails, tried to track down Mitch, whoever that was. Nothing. No digital footprint, no financial records, not a single mention of Bitcoin anywhere else in the man's life. That was the part that got under Evan's skin. His uncle hadn't been rich. He drove a 15-year-old truck, drank instant coffee, paid bills with checks. He fixed people's lawnmowers for cash and stashed quarters in a jar labeled Vegas. So why the hell was there $400,000 sitting in cold storage behind a radiator? And why leave it behind? That was the part that got under Evan's skin. His uncle hadn't been rich. He drove a 15-year-old truck, drank instant coffee, paid bills with checks. And why leave it behind? Think about what else to do. 1 at a storage unit under a fake name. Then he did something he hadn't done in years. He took 2 days off work, booked a cabin in the mountains, left his phone behind, and just let himself feel it. The quiet, the strange, almost weightless calm of not being in crisis anymore. He thought about the drive again on the last night of the trip, sat on the porch and turned it over in his hands, imagining who else might have held it, what it had meant back then. He still didn't know what he was going to do with the rest, but at least now he wasn't afraid to look at it. Coming up next, the real value behind the coins, and why he hasn't spent the last 5. Don't miss the ending. Hit subscribe. The coins were valuable, but what came with them, that's what changed him. He never spent the rest. The last 5 coins still sit in cold storage, split across 2 hardware wallets, one of which lives inside a humidity-sealed box at the bottom of a rented storage unit he pays cash for every month under a fake name. He checks on them twice a year. Not out of paranoia exactly, more like reverence. Because the truth is, those coins became more than money. They became a question, one he still couldn't fully answer. Unknown. He kept trying to figure it out, how his uncle had come to own them. There were no financial records, no crypto logins, no receipts. The folder with the J2013 note was the only written trace. He even hired a freelance data recovery specialist to scan 3 of his uncle's old hard drives, hoping to find an original wallet file or some clue. Nothing turned up. At one point, Evan wondered if the coins had even been his uncle's at all. Maybe he was just safekeeping them for someone else. That Mitch person? Still a mystery. Evan searched every contact list, email, invoice, even called 2 former coworkers. One said he remembered a Mitch, guy with a ponytail, maybe? Knew stuff about radio frequencies. But that was a dead end too. And yet, someone had gone to the trouble of hiding that USB behind a radiator, wrapping it, labeling it, leaving just enough breadcrumbs. Who does that and then never returns for it? Sometimes, Evan wondered if his uncle had forgotten it. Or maybe he'd deliberately left it behind. A test, a final puzzle. The old man had always been private, bordering on secretive. He loved mystery novels, did crosswords in pen, liked the idea of things being for later. Or maybe he just didn't know what he had. Evan never spent lavishly. He didn't quit his job or move into a condo. He still lived in the same apartment, drove a used hatchback, and bought groceries on sale. But he stopped worrying. He slept better, walked slower, ate breakfast without checking the clock. He'd paid off every dollar of debt, helped his sister with a down payment, quietly covered a friend's medical bill without saying who it was from. And once, just once, he flew to Iceland alone, stayed in a little cabin, and watched the northern lights without a single bar of signal. One night, he was sitting at his kitchen table, looking at the flash drive again. Not the new ones, the original. Still scratched, still bent, now wrapped in clean black tape, a new seal over an old secret. He thought about how close he'd come to throwing it away, how it had rattled out from behind a radiator like just another broken bit of plastic, and how something inside him had whispered. Sometimes people ask him, in the vaguest way, how he got out of debt or changed his situation. He just says, "I found something that made me pay attention." And that's true. But what he really found was a moment, one of those impossibly rare, quiet little miracles that life hides in boxes, drawers, attics, or radiator corners. Something that's not given exactly, but offered, if you're paying attention. Moral of the story? If you ever find a flash drive wrapped in tape, don't plug it in, at least not right away, and never assume it's junk, because sometimes it's the kind of thing that rewrites your life in plain text.